I just wanted to give a few more words on the use of the pinch collar, explaining a bit more about them, how to apply them. People have a bit of confusion with them when they get them. They're a bit of a Chinese puzzle once you take them apart. This collar is not sharp on the bottom. I can put this on my hand, I can do this, I can pull, and that offers me, very little discomfort. There are pinch collars that are made for small dogs, such as Foxy has on. She's a beautiful Basenji, and she's got a little pinch collar on. With the use of these, what I like to do is when I break them apart, I take them apart in the middle so that we have a few links on each side. There are places where you can take this apart where at the end it says open. Some of them come with an extra clamp along the chain piece here which allows you to open them. I always take it apart somewhere in the middle. That way, when you throw it on the table later on and you want to go and put it back on the dog, you pick it up at one end and you let it hang. So that way you know it's not twisted. When you put it back together, you just simply make sure that both of the prongs go in the end holes, and that way when you put it on the dog, you've got this smooth action happening. If you're not careful, even if you break it apart in the middle and you pick it up and you just grab it and stick it back together, you may have these two pieces, the prongs in the holes properly, but when you put it on the dog, there's a piece here that is tied up. It's twisted. Now, if that ever happens, break it apart in the middle again, drop your collar, let it hang, pick it back up, stick it together, and you've solved your problem. By taking it apart at the end where it says open, you can end up twisting this piece, which gives you your tied up look again. And then if you break it apart in the middle and try to solve things, you'll actually end up with half the prongs going out and half the prongs going in. It gets very confusing, and people bring them to me in a little pile and they're crying and they say, help me, I can't get it back together. So if that all happens, then you've just got to break it apart and start over. But that's why I say always break them apart in the middle so that you've got them back together the correct way. Now let's see if I did that the right way. And there we go. We're back together properly. Now also on these collars, you'll see that there are two places to hook something to. This piece here has a swivel. That's where you would put your leash onto. This here looks like a choke chain ring. And because people are familiar with what the choke chain looks like, they think that, well, I'll hook my leash on there. But what happens if you do that, you are then operating the collar from the backside, and it does not operate properly. Okay? So our leash is always hooked onto the piece that turns around, swivels 360 degrees. One other thing with the sizing of this collar is not meant to slide over a dog's head. You put it over the dog's head and you pull it over, you got the risk of poking the dog in the eyes like that. Then also what happens is if you've got enough links in this collar to be able to slide it over the dog's head, when it gets on the dog, it's going to be way too sloppy. This piece of chain should not be hanging down like this. You want it on the dog so that it's almost fully tight and backed off just a little bit like that. So there's a little bit of slop in the chain, so that when you correct the dog, when you do your correction there, it pops and it springs open again. If there's too much collar hanging down, what can happen is the dog can be goofing around. They can get their foot caught in there and they start pulling themselves around. So we want to make sure as these links come out, if you've got too many links in there, you just take individual links out, and then you can size the collar down smaller for your dog. If your dog is a larger dog, you can get extra links for this and just simply make this longer. If you have a large dog, this here is a medium weight collar. In some brands it's called a 21-inch collar. But they do make a very heavy, thick collar. It looks like you could put it on a grizzly bear. I never use those collars. They're too bulky. They don't operate smoothly on the chain when you go to make the corrections. People with big dogs have tried them and they get very limited response. They go down to the smaller collar, the lighter collar, and the correction works much better. They get almost an instant change in the dog's behavior just by going down to a smaller collar. And I've had some large dogs and I've had to put an extra 8 links in the thing just to get it around their neck. But this collar is strong enough for those dogs.